Inside the Tragedy of Othello, Jacqueline Estrada, period 7. Summary. The Tragedy of Othello, written by Shakespeare, is all about a tragedy of a love triangle gone wrong. Set in stone in Italy and Cyprus, Iago, who is the villain of the play, sets out to destroy all who have done him wrong in any way. Iago begins to inflict his revenge on all the characters. He begins by following an order. To begin, his anger is directed on Othello the Moor, who he hates for promoting Cassio to the position of a lieutenant, a position that Iago wanted for himself. First, he uses Roderigo, who has feelings for Desdemona, in order to manipulate him into doing all his dirty work for him. Second follows Cassio, Othello's lieutenant, who Iago gets drunk and sends Roderigo to start a fight with him. While fighting, Cassio inadvertently stabs the governor of Cyprus, which leaves him punished by Othello, thus leading the kind-hearted Desdemona to ask Othello to take back Cassio. At this point, everything is falling into place for Iago because he uses Desdemona's kindness and speaks to Othello, telling him that something intimate is happening. This causes anger in Othello, and he sets out to kill Desdemona. Emilia, who is Iago's wife and Desdemona's friend, convinces Othello that Desdemona was never unfaithful. This makes Iago very angry, and he kills her. Othello, knowing the truth, is so guilt-stricken that he kills himself. The play tragically ends with Iago destroying all. Symbolism. I am glad I have found this napkin. This was our first remembrance from the Moor. My wayward husband hath 100 times wooed me to steal it, but she so loves the token that she reserves it evermore about her to kiss and to talk to. I'll have work taken out. Shakespeare, Act 3, Scene 3. In this scene, the author Shakespeare utilizes the handkerchief as a symbolism of various things in the play. The handkerchief represents a token of Othello's love to Desdemona because it was one of the first gifts Othello gave to Desdemona, and it was the start of their marriage. The purpose of the handkerchief as a symbolism was to show that when Desdemona lost the handkerchief, it was a representation of their marriage tearing apart. There is a huge sentimental value that Othello has for the handkerchief that once it was lost, it created a downfall and spin-off in the characters. For example, Othello's jealousy controlled him that it led to his destruction in not only hurting the love of his life, but also losing his identity as a person. This connects to the theme of materialism because Othello viewed the handkerchief as a symbol for their love, and once it was gone, their marriage was basically over. Paradox. Poor and content is rich, and rich enough. But riches find less is a poor as winter. To him that ever fears he shall be poor. Good heaven, the souls of all my tribe defend from jealousy. Shakespeare, Act 3, Scene 3. The author utilizes the use of paradox in order for the reader to see Iago's true colors, that he is not a good person at all. It shows the emotion Iago feels for Othello. He considered Othello as nothing, so this in turn allowed him to ruin Othello and not feel any sense of remorse or guilt. Iago tries to comfort Othello by telling him that he is good enough, but is really twisting his words and saying Othello is basically nothing. The purpose of including the paradox was to show the underlying meaning to Iago's words. It goes to show that the type of person he is, which is pure evil. This connects to the theme of betrayal because Iago is supposed to be his friend and companion that gives him advice in life, but in reality he is not, looking out for Othello but plotting against him. Simile. For that I do suspect the lusting Moor hath leaped into my seat, the thought whereof doth like a poisonous mineral gone my inwards, and nothing can or shall content my soul. Shakespeare, Act 2, Scene 1. In one of his many soliloquies, Iago explains to the audience that one reason he intends to ruin Cassio's life is that he suspects Cassio has slept with Emilia, Iago's wife. He describes the pain and anger he feels as the bare thought eating his insides up. Shakespeare included the simile in order for the audience to see another side of Iago besides his evil side, where he feels emotion for the fact that he suspects there's an infidelity between his wife and Cassio, the man that Othello chose instead of him. For Iago, the mere thought is unbearable. Due to the fact that Shakespeare included this simile, Iago expresses human characteristics like the feeling of hurt, and this builds his identity as a character. This overall connects to the theme of loss of faith because Iago does not have any faith in any of the characters, so he inflicts a revenge on all. The desire for revenge was so huge for Iago that he experienced not only loss of faith, but a loss of his sense of moral compass. Metaphor. Your heart is a burst, you have lost half your soul. Even now, very now, an old black ram is tapping your white ewe. Shakespeare, Act 1, Scene 10. Shakespeare included this metaphor in order to show gender roles in the setting of his play. Shakespeare used this metaphor because it shows how the people in their society view different races. For example, Othello is referred as black and Desdemona as white. It is evident that they saw colored people as not racially equal to white people. This connects to the theme of identity because in their society, your identity as a person could easily be robbed from you because they would define you by what they saw through their eyes. Text to self, text to text, text to the world. Text to self. I connect to the character Emilia due to her desire to please her husband, Iago, at all times. I feel that at times I am similar to her because I hate the idea of letting people down. I'm sometimes naive-ish, like Emilia, at realizing the fact that her husband was using her and she was oblivious to that. Text to text, Othello connects to the novel of Kite Runner due to the fact that gender roles are illustrated in both pieces of literature. For example, the women in Othello are seen as inferior to men. The society in Othello pictures the perfect woman to be an obedient housewife. Similarly, in the Kite Runner, the Hazaras are seen as a minority and are generally persecuted by the other majority groups like the Pashtuns. This connection between these two texts is that they both have social groups that do not have the same rights and freedoms as the rest of the groups. Text to the world. A current event that connects to Othello is that in recent news, the Trump administration and the Department of Homeland Security has announced the end of TPS for immigrants from El Salvador. TPS is known as Temporary Protected Status, which allows immigrants to live and work legally in the U.S. This connects to Othello because similarly, Iago robbed the characters of their right on the control of their lives. Iago planned everything so that in the end he would have his perfect world. Trump is doing the same thing by trying to remove people from the U.S. so he can, in his eyes, have a perfect version of the U.S. These connections are significant to my understanding of the text on a deeper level because I am able to see all these outside sources and how they are similar to Othello. I can also see that in my everyday life all around me, there are aspects to Othello that are occurring all around me. Setting. Othello takes place in Venice, Italy, and Cyprus, an island in the Mediterranean Sea colonized by the Venetians at the time. And this time, Italy was not a unified country, but a region that included many independent states, of which Venice was one. The Turks hotly contested Venice's control of Cyprus, which is located near the coast. The play is set during the early modern period in the 1500s, during the time where Venice fought a number of battles against the Ottoman Empire as seen in the play. The setting played a major role in the story because there was a battle going on. The characters traveled to Cyprus. With the fact that there was a battle occurring, this played in part with the outcomes of the situations. For example, the fact that Desdemona confided in Iago as a result of the battle going on, so she was vulnerable and in need of help with her husband. Favorite quotes. To mourn, my first one is to mourn a mischief that is past and gone is the next way to draw a new mischief on. Shakespeare Act 1, Scene 3. I really like this quote because I completely agree with it that if something happened in the past, then it should be left there in the past because bad things occur when resurfacing things back, and it brings negative energy in one's life. Second quote is, I will wear my heart upon my sleeve for dolls to peck at, and not what I am. Shakespeare Act 1, Scene 1. I like this quote because Iago is very blunt at this part. He is letting the audience know that he will manipulate and act deceptive if that's what he wants to do. Third quote is, I kiss their Erie, I kiss thee, no wait but this, killing myself to die upon a kiss. Shakespeare Act 5, Scene 2. This was one of my favorite ones because Othello realizes he killed Desdemona when she was innocent, and the only way to repent what he did was to kill himself too. Unique discoveries I did about the author Shakespeare. William Shakespeare was an English playwright, actor, and poet, also known as the Bard of Avon and often called England's national poet. Born in Stratford upon Avon, England, he was an important member of the Lord Chamberlain's Men's Company of theatrical players from roughly 1594 onward, over to the course of 2 decades from about 1590 to 1613. Shakespeare wrote a total of 37 plays revolving around several main themes: histories, tragedies, comedies, and tragicomedies. He married Anne Hathaway on November 28, 1582 in Worcester in Canterbury Province. Hathaway was from Shottery, a small village a mile west of Stratford. William was 18 and Anne was 26. By 1519, there is evidence William Shakespeare earned a living as an actor and playwright in London. Final analysis. In my opinion, I think that Othello is a very good play for many reasons. I liked the underlying message that your weakness can be used against you in any point in life, that your closest companion can secretly be your enemy. I also liked how it was different from the stories I usually read, in the sense that the villain of the play won, whereas typically after a struggle and resolution, the hero wins. I would like to read more about Shakespeare's works because even though they are difficult to understand, most of the time because of the language, they are really good works. I would rate this play from a scale of 1 through 10, 10 being the best, a solid 7. Because of all the people that died, that was very tragic.